Welcome, everyone. I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Joan Hermanowski. I've known Joan for quite a few years now and have had the pleasure of seeing some of her truly amazing and breathtaking collection. Joan began collecting in the 1980s, and she started out with Czech perfume bottles. Then she expanded later into Wedgwood, and for many years has focused on collecting beautiful figural pieces. In 1997, Joan's collection was featured in an exhibition at the St. Petersburg Art Museum, the one in Florida. Later, Joan gave a presentation at one of our in-person Florida Flamingo chapter meetings, and she brought along some stunning examples of her from her collection that many of us still remember. Today, Joan brings with her years of research, enthusiasm, and a wonderful eye for beauty and history, along with some fun and extraordinary examples to share with us. So, with that, it is my pleasure to welcome Joan Hermanowski.
Thank you, Terry. Good day to all. Thank you for inviting me to speak to this group of scent bottle lovers. I am aware that among this association's members, there are individuals with greater knowledge and experience than myself. However, I do hope my presentation will prove interesting. Today, my intention is to share the information I have gathered about English 18th century soft paste porcelain and its makers. The period under discussion is a short one, from the early 1740s to 1784. With that in mind, I would like to begin with the basics and a little background. First, why soft paste? China had a true hard paste porcelain formula for over 1,000 years. The Meissen Porcelain Factory created the formula for hard paste. Unfortunately, the English companies were unable to duplicate the formula as they lacked one vital ingredient called kaolin. A hard paste was finally developed in 1768. By this time, the English companies were disinclined to change their successful methods of production. It was only with the invention of bone china by the Spode Company around 1800 that soft paste disappeared. Second, several wars occurring among the European countries between 1740 and 1763 prevented the importation of foreign porcelain wares. The English companies were able to take advantage of the embargo and provide the sought-after wares the public favored. Third, today the focus is on the production of soft paste items called toys. The word toys described small porcelain novelties that included scent bottles, etuis, patch boxes, thimbles, seals, cane handles, and bonbonnières. These trinkets were popular holiday gifts and gifts for gentlemen to give when calling on ladies. These toys range in size from approximately 1 to 5 inches in height. Those illustrated today are not presented to size, as they have been enlarged to improve viewing. I acquired all of these scent bottles in the mid-1990s. 2 came from antique dealers, and I purchased the rest at Sotheby's, Christie's, and Doyle auctions. Differences of opinion among the experts in the field will be noted. We begin with the most successful companies in the production of toys. The Chelsea Porcelain Manufactory was among the earliest soft paste porcelain companies established in England. Its founding date is subject to some debate. The Encyclopedia Britannica cites 1743, while others say it was 1745. The earliest documented reference to Chelsea porcelain sales occurred in November of 1746. The company was founded by Charles Goun, who served as its first director, and Nicholas Fremont, his partner. Both men were already established in their respective fields. Goun was a jeweler with a shop at the St. James area, and Fremont was registered as a silversmith in 1743, with his known pieces dating from then to 1747. Around 1748 or 49, the partnership dissolved, and Goun went on to create a rival company. Here, Elizabeth Adams, in her second edition of Chelsea Porcelain, suggests it was Fremont who was responsible for forming the company, but needed funding from Goun. The company distinguished itself by targeting the luxury goods market rather than the tableware market favored by other English porcelain companies. Fremont benefited from the trade embargo that limited the sale of foreign goods. In June 1751, he was given access to a large Meissen collection, which allowed him to reproduce popular Meissen forms and patterns that were preferred by his customers. Fremont's Chelsea company is well documented, with 4 distinct periods. Of particular interest to perfume bottle collectors are the third period, known as the Red Anchor, 1752 to 56, and the fourth period, the Gold Anchor, 1758 to 1769. The first mention of Chelsea toys for sale appeared in print in 1754. During the Red Anchor period, many natural forms, such as animals, birds, and flowers, were featured. In the subsequent Gold Anchor period, earlier models continued to be produced alongside new editions of lovers, flute players, children, and cupids. Multiple marks were used during this period and will be addressed in a later section. The Chelsea Company was sold in 1769 and again in 1770 to the Derby Company. Its popularity and prestige guaranteed its continued operation at its original address until the factory was demolished in 1784. Here we have a Chelsea standing monk circa 1755. It has double gold mounts and stoppers, gilt rim to base. Base underside has a polychrome floral spray. Here we have a Chelsea peach, circa 1755. And it has different shades of different colors, gilt metal collar and stopper with a chain connecting the stopper to the collar. See also Chelsea and Other English Porcelain, page 130, where the identical bottle is described as an apple. It's 2 1/8 inches tall. Chelsea Children and Plum Tree, circa 1765, have 2 boys and a young lady climbing about, picking plums. It's mounted in gold with a butterfly stopper. And on the base, there is a gilded, if I could see what it's gilded flower and leaves, evidently. Here we have Cupid in a bower, circa 1765. It's gold mounted. And the underside is decorated with a gilt floral spray within a turquoise dental border. The neck is mounted in gold, but it has a brass stopper, which probably is a replacement. Okay. A Chelsea Harlequin, circa 1755. It has a gold mount and stopper. The entire head is the stopper. The dome base is painted with flowers banded in gold. And the underside is painted with a bouquet of polychrome flowers, and it's 3 1/4 inches tall. Here's another Cupid at rhinestone, circa 1755. It's gold mounted. Winged Cupid sharpening an arrow. The mount and stopper neck in gold, and a pair of billing doves form the stopper. The underside is painted with a gold and red arrow and a French motto with a turquoise dental border. The same model with a different stopper can be found in Chelsea and other English porcelain. Another Cupid with donkey, circa 1760. Cupid is standing with his quiver and arrows holding a gray and white donkey. It has a floral stopper. The underside is decorated with a gilt floral spray and green pontil edging. Edward Lawrence's book, Perfume and Manders, has the same pose and the same underside. And another Cupid, but here Bacchus takes the front page and is feeding a goblet of wine to poor little Cupid. The bottle mount and stopper are gold. The stopper is in the form of a cluster of purple grapes and green leaves. The underside is decorated with a gilt floral sprig beneath a French motto with a green dental border. The book Chelsea and Other English Porcelain has a slightly smaller model, and wine glass, I believe, is in gold. Flower-filled basket and boy, circa 1760. The tall flower-filled basket around which 2 young boys chase birds. It has a gold mount and stopper, and the gold chain attaches the stopper to the mount. The domed underside is decorated with gilded flowers. Here's a chinoiserie figure, circa 1760. It's a ballister-shaped bottle with a central figure of a boy with turban and oriental dress. The reverse shows a girl in turban and western dress, and has a matching screw cap with flowers. And this is the reverse, showing the girl with a turban and in western dress. This bottle is circa 1755, in the shape of a wine flask in straw-colored wicker. The label in French with a misspelled word translates to scented water. The long, narrow neck is decorated on each side with different flowers, and it has a butterfly stopper. Chelsea Lady with Monk, circa 1760 to 1765. Here, the kneeling lady is holding the hand of the brown-robed seated monk. It has a gold mount and stopper, and the stopper in the shape of a bouquet of flowers. The concave underside of base inscribed with a French motto. Here's a Chelsea heart, circa 1765, each side decorated with exotic gilded birds among gilt foliage on a mottled claret background. The slightly domed cover has a gilt ball knob. It is pictured in Kate Foster's book Saint Bottles, and no other bottles of this shape appear to be recorded in
literature or auction records.
Thank you. And we now come to the next popular, St. James Girl in a Swing. This figure is in the Victoria and Albert Museum and is of soft paste porcelain. It is described as a domestic ornament and depicts a girl swinging on a seat hung between two branches. The back is less well finished and was probably intended to be viewed only from the front. It was created about 1752 and is 5 inches high and 6.7 inches wide. For many years, this piece and a whole group of related porcelain figures were called Girl in a Swing wares. They were thought to be and also attributed to the Chelsea factory. It was only the research published in 1993 that finally linked the group to Charles Goun. Circa 1748, Charles Goun left the Chelsea company he had founded and established a rival company. It is presumed he created the molds for the early toys and took them with him when he left. His company has been described as a small boutique workshop with limited runs, concentrating on the production of toys. As seen with the previous slide, very little is known of this company. There was speculation and opinion that Chelsea purchased this company and molds in 1753 or 54, and that Charles continued his jewelry work at the St. James location. For many years, while this piece and a whole group of related porcelain figures were called Girl in a Swingware, they were thought to be and also attributed to the Chelsea factory. It was only with the research published in 1993 that finally linked the group to Charles Goun. This was based on information discovered in French archives. Elizabeth Adams, in her 2001 book, Chelsea Porcelain, corrects her earlier edition and devoted one chapter to St. James and also extended the company's life to 1759, while also showcasing other small items produced at this factory. In a landmark 2004 paper, ceramic scholar Errol Manners located a specific fob seal extending the operating date to 1760 or 1761. The St. James modeling of the seal is based on a well-known portrait print by Richard Houston, completed in 1760. There has been a noted difference of opinion between Elizabeth Adams and Kate Foster regarding the factory's timeline and output. Kate Foster is a porcelain expert at Sotheby's Auction House in London, published her book Scent Bottles in 1961. Her timeline certainly would have been extended to fit Elizabeth Adams if she had the information that became available in 1993. As to the output, Kate Foster has divided toy production into 5 distinct groups. The first and smallest in number and of exceptional fine quality she attributes to the St. James factory. Included in the group is a sleeping girl with mastiff. The next group includes nearly 50 models that the author believes belong neither to Chelsea nor St. James. Here, Elizabeth Adams disagrees and believes they could be St. James, made to appeal to a wider market than those mounted in gold. Several different marks appearing on the underside of these bases will be addressed in a later section. There is no definitive date to mark the end of the St. James factory, but it certainly would have come to an end with the death of its proprietor in 1785. St. James Billing Dove, circa 1749 to 1760. I've extended the date on these from 1759 to 1760, since now we know it's at least 1760 that the factory was still producing. So it's a double scent bottle with stoppers in the shape of birds on a flower, and the concave underside is decorated with pink flower and green leaves, and it's 2.5 inches tall. Here's St. James with a cat and a grapevine, and he's climbing the grapevine to catch the birds. It has a gold mount and chain attached to a butterfly stopper. The concave underside has a painted pink flower and
surrounded by green leaves, and it's 2.5 inches tall.
St. James monkey with baby, circa 1755 to 1760, is modeled as the monkey carrying a baby, monkey in a basket. It has gold mounts and stoppers on the two heads and a gilded serrated border. There were flowers on the underside of the dome base, and a Jack bottle described as
Chelsea, 1755, in Chelsea and Other English Porcelain, figure 92, plate 62, 2¼ inches tall.
Here is St. James, circa 1749 to 1760. The young standing girl is holding a dove in her hands and standing beside a seated Dalmatian dog. The butterfly stopper sits on top of the yellow basket of flowers on her back. The concave underside painted black and mottled green.
2.125 inches tall.
This is the one mentioned by Kate Foster in her book. It's The Sleeping Girl with Mastiff, and it's a double scent bottle and stoppers. The dog's head and the flower are up behind the girl's head. It's 2¾ inches with the rose stopper, and it's also in the Chelsea and Other English Porcelain. But it doesn't have a double stopper. St. James, boy with flute, circa 1750 to 1760. Here he's playing a flute and sitting upon a green and black rubble rockery, wearing bright colored clothing, has a gold mounted stopper of flower buds and leaves. The circular base bears a French motto, and the underside is painted green with
black reticulation and ornamented with a single pink rose, 3.5 inches tall.
And this is a St. James soft paste porcelain box, which contains 4 glass scent bottles and is 2.5 inches high. We now come to the third company. It's Darby in British English and Derby in American English. The official beginning of the Derby porcelain manufactory was in 1756. In 1775, Derby was granted the right to use the crown in its mark, leading to the name Crown Derby, and in 1890 added the royal to the name. Derby produced high-quality decorative and luxury goods, including figueroles, tableware, vases, and dinner services. Prior to its acquisition of the Chelsea firm, Derby produced several types of scent bottles. A long-necked pear-shaped with bud stopper, approximately 6 inches long, a flattened body with bud stopper, approximately 5 inches tall, a shepherdess with lamb basket stopper, approximately 5.5 to 6.5 inches, and a miniature baluster, approximately 1.5 to 2 inches. Small figural scent bottles are rare, but the documented forms do include a shepherdess holding a small lamb, standing musicians, and a rose. With its acquisition of the Chelsea Company in 1770, and the Bow Company in 1776, Derby became the largest porcelain producer in Britain. Skilled bow workers moved to Derby, and bow molds and designs were reused or adapted at Derby. Certain models exist in both versions. As mentioned earlier, due to its prestige and popularity, the Chelsea factory continued to operate at its original site until 1784, when the factory was finally demolished. The molds, patterns, and workmen then transferred to the Derby factory. During the period 1770 to 1784, wares produced are identified as Chelsea Derby. Derby supplied the clay used at both companies, and Chelsea molds would be used at either location. Here we have a Derby cat climbing a grapevine. It's identical to the earliest St. James model. And see Scent Bottles Through the Ages, page 32, also depicting this model as 19th century. But its authenticity was not authenticated at the sale of this model. And we now come to the last company. The Bow Company. Bow in British English, Bow in American English, was originally named the Canton China Works. Together with the Chelsea Company, the Bow Company is one of the earliest porcelain companies in England. The most recent information regarding the forming of this company relates to two founders of the company receiving a royal patent to produce porcelain on December 8, 1744. This implies the company was already in existence. The patent also specifies, which I find interesting, using clay they obtained from the Cherokee Nation in the English colony Carolina. The formula did not prove successful, and in 1748, they applied for a second patent, which eliminated the clay and introduced bone ash as an additive. The company was highly profitable. A major portion of its production was in large amounts of usable wares, often imitating Chinese and Japanese imports, and figures of various sizes for display. The factory marks are inconsistent. Some pieces bear an anchor or a dagger or unmarked. There are only a handful of securely attributed examples of scent bottles in major museums. There's a flask-shaped form at the British Museum. There's a flask-shaped form at the Victoria and Albert Museum. There's a harlequin figure at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and there's a harlequin scent bottle at the Gardner Museum in Toronto, Canada. As mentioned earlier, the company was purchased in 1776 by the Derby Company. And at that time, its molds, designs, and implements were transferred to Derby. The next slide depicts the harlequin bottle sold at auction in 2025 for more than £5,000, although there is uncertainty as to its attribution. The second figure of Columbine was sold at the perfume bottle auction in 2020. Ken Leach identified it as probably Bow. It sold for $700, and if correct, a huge bargain. Here we have Harlequin wearing a checkered costume and holding a bunch of grapes in his right hand and a slapstick in his left. And the concave underside shows a mixed floral spray. It's 3.1 inches high. Columbine is
gaily dressed with flower sprigs on her dress, 4 inches high.
The technique for making soft paste porcelain items were of two types: slip cast and press molding. The first, preferred by Chelsea, particularly in the gold anchor period for figure scent bottles, utilized a plaster mold which was packed with a water-filled clay. The plaster drew the water out of the clay, leaving a hollow interior, and when the mold was opened, the figures were removed, fully formed. The seams were then trimmed, the piece was glazed and refired. St. James also used this method. The second is press molding, which Derby preferred and is much easier to use. The pieces are put together after the first firing, leaving a seam, which is covered up after a glaze is applied, and the second firing. To prevent sticking and breaking during the second firing, the glaze was not applied on the edges of the base, and the piece was set directly on the kiln surface without support. A second method was to attach small balls of clay to the bottom of the piece, and these were broken off after the second firing, leaving small marks. The enamels used in finishing the toys were Bow copied the Chinese palette with soft rose pink, manganese purple, and paired greens and blues. The enamels appear warm, slightly muted, and are not glassy. Gold is light or absent. For Chelsea, especially in the gold anchor period, it used rich enamels, more European, with strong blues, greens, and puce, and heavy gilding. The colors are denser and more confident than Bow. St. James preferred light, delicate, and less saturated pastels. Enamel often thinly applied. The palette is softer than Bow, with very little gilding. Some pieces have none. And Derby preferred bright pinks, greens, and blues. The marks are various for Chelsea. They had red or gold anchor and floral arrangements. Derby used a crown plus the D or a patch mark. Bow used an anchor or dagger or left it unmarked. And as to dating and identifying, as indicated early with the Derby climbing cat, the St. James model would imply it was a smaller version of a Chelsea bottle. And although Derby was not known to use Chelsea models until the later Chelsea Derby period, while the Chelsea factory was closed circa 1757, some Chelsea workmen did move to Derby to work and may have brought some molds with them. We will never know. Another example regarding identification of the period of production is the bottle viewed earlier in the shape of a wine flask. It is identified in Edmund Lawrence's book, Perfume and Commanders, as gold anchor, 1758. The book Chelsea and Other English Porcelain dates the bottle to 1755, the red anchor period. Also with the Harlequin model, the dates and attribution are in question. We have now arrived at the end of this excursion into a minor piece of 18th century history. The Chelsea Company has been demolished and no longer exists. The Bow Company has been absorbed into the Crown Derby factory, and Charles Huon is deceased. The public's taste has turned to French neoclassicism, and toys have lost their popularity. Newly created bottles will follow neoclassical lines. I hope that those of you who are watching today will find this discussion useful and will agree, one, that the astonishing number of delicate toy scent bottles that have survived for more than 275 years is remarkable. 2, that at times identifying the maker of a soft paste piece can be surprisingly difficult, if not impossible. And finally, for those who love these items for what they are rather than their value, the attribution is not really material. Thank you.